And hello, Scott. It's so good to see you again. It's been a
Too.
whole week.
Yeah, a week.
And we had fun in the afternoon class today, and now we're looking forward to the evening class. Now, Scott asked, are there any new people? Anybody want to tone in to how you heard about the classes? Or, was it from your doctor? Was it from a friend? And what benefit you might expect to hope for?
A couple people in the chat posted they're either new or have attended one class. We've got a few new people, and that's fine. If they're too shy to speak up, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm new, but I'm here on behalf of my husband who saw Scott this last week.
Great. So you're here to coach him and help him out and try to understand why he might make different food choices. Yes?
Exactly.
Well, good for you for being supportive. And, I started doing this myself about 10 years ago, not for myself at all, but it was for my wife's sake. And I am thrilled that I did that. No regrets whatsoever, just nothing but joy.
Thank you.
I'm new. Scott referred me to come and said it's nice to have experienced people, and I've been doing this diet for quite a while, so I thought it would be fun.
Great, Laura, glad to have you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Carrie Murphy. I'm new. I just signed up, and I signed up because a friend of mine wanted me to do this with him. So, and I don't see him here tonight. But I'm super excited about being here, and I'm not on camera, so forgive me.
No, no forgiveness needed. Everybody gets to do what they're comfortable with here. There's no policeman. You don't get tickets. You don't get grades. Just enjoy listening. And, if you have questions, feel free to chime in or put it in the chat. And we'll eventually get to it. So welcome.
It reminds me of soils. Thank goodness for pass, no pass.
You can audit this class, yeah.
Well, I'm not new, but I've been attending Charlie and Scott's class since October of 2020. And I absolutely love being on a whole food plant-based diet. I've dropped 16 pounds and lowered my blood pressure substantially. And my arthritis has just completely gone away.
Oh, no wonder it's not charging. Okay. It must have come out of this.
Peggy, thank
Yes.
you so much for sharing that. It's so important for the new people, the ones who are like, do I really want to be here? It's important for them to hear that. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. I like my new lifestyle. I will never go back to eating any kind of animal products or oils, and this has been amazing. So thank you, Charlie and Scott.
Welcome, and make sure everybody mutes their microphone unless they're going to speak, just so we don't get the background noise.
So, okay, we've had our introductions, and we're looking forward to the presentation tonight. We have quite a number of people, which is great, into the 40s. 42 right now, probably be 45 by the time we get done. Some people just kind of hop on a little bit later. They've got things to do or whatever. And some people never hop on at all. They do send us notes, however, and they say we log on to the website and we look at the archive files, or we look at the files that were recorded over the last couple weeks, even though we can't make your meeting, and we have this question or that. And so there are other members who are following along with you, maybe not in this meeting itself, but sharing similar desire to gain their health, keep their health, improve their health, whatever. Tonight's an important topic, one that so many people struggle with, and it makes transitioning choices. It's one of the barriers to for people to actually achieve the success they're looking for. And so Scott is going to be talking on food addiction and whatever else he desires tonight, and answering your questions.
And tonight's all about calorie density for weight management, calorie density. And then next week, Charlie's going to talk about weight management. And then in 2 weeks from tonight, I'm going to be talking about food addiction and behavior change, a separate class. So mine's a two-parter. So we do the weight management aspect tonight and next week, and then we'll do the food addiction behavior change in 2 weeks. So, but tonight,
this is all tied in together, and I'm sorry I tried to force you down another path, but
what's great about
you'll keep us straight.
Yeah, what's great about tonight is it doesn't even have to. This applies to any way of eating. So as far as any type of a diet somebody's following, these concepts of calorie density are universal. So it doesn't, you don't have to be following a whole food plant-based diet necessarily to apply the knowledge that you're going to get tonight about calorie density. It's universal. But what you're going to find is the foods that are the healthiest and the basically the most beneficial to help with weight loss happen to be whole foods that are plant-based. You're going to see that, but it doesn't mean you have to be eating this way to get the benefits. So you'll learn that here in a few minutes. But I wanted to start off, if it's okay, I take over here, Charlie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And go ahead and share my screen here. I want to show on the website real quick. Well, it was in Sunday's email. And any of you that are new, first I'll show our class website real quick. If you're new to these classes, you can go to the website. It's just www.livelifestylemedicine.com. And if you want to get on the weekly group email list, if you're not already on the email list, you can just click right here on the homepage and just add your email. And here's my email right here. You can also just email me directly, scott@aol.com, and just ask to be put on my weekly email list. And you'll get an email every week that has the links to the class and some bonus information. So you can do that for those of you that are new. And I'll be referring back to this website several times tonight when I go through this presentation. But the other thing I want to announce is just those of you that get the emails already, you probably already saw the new Eugene Plant-Based Providers website and the newsletter. So let me pull up, there it is, the website. And it was the link to this website was in the email from Sunday, and it's going to be in every week, so you'll be able to refer to it. But it's eugeneplantbasedproviders.com. So it's really simple to remember, Eugene Plant-Based Providers. This is our website. So you can check it out, and you can join the newsletter. So if you put your email here and click sign up, you can get we're going to do a monthly newsletter. And I already wrote the first one, which was just kind of a welcome to this group. I think we had 48 people signed up already for the newsletter. I just checked this morning. And so you can get that there. And then there's also a class email sign up here. So if you're already getting the class email on Sunday, you don't need to do this again. This is just for people that may be new, don't know about Charlie and I's classes here. You can sign up through here. But so don't do that if you're already getting the weekly email. But this is just for the newsletter here. So you can check that out. But yeah, check out the website, has a list of the providers, We have our mission statement there. So here's some of here's the active members currently, different physicians and medical professionals here in Eugene. So check that out. All right, let me go ahead and go to presentation here. As I said, it's a kind of a two-parter. So weight management portion tonight, and then food addiction and behavior change will be in 2 weeks. My volume still okay, Charlie? Am I speaking loud enough? Okay. All right.
Yes, it's good. Good.
So we'll start with a couple of inspiring quotes. We don't change the direction in which we are going, we will end up where we are headed. It's Red Skelton. He was known for having those kind of obvious quotes, but clever. And also C.S. Lewis saying, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. All right, so we're going to talk about a few things here with weight management. So first, we're going to talk about how our appetite works, and then get into some more details. So with our appetite, there's different things words that you might need to understand the meaning of, like satiety, so or being satiated or satisfied. So satiated means, yeah, from the word satisfied. Satiety, same thing, just different pronunciation. So we like that feeling of being full. That's what satiety is. And so how our appetite works is we have two basic mechanisms, physiologic mechanisms of how we feel full. And the first one is actually little nerves that we have on the outside of our stomach lining. Then they're have little stretch receptors in them. And so as our stomach gets filled up and it starts to stretch out, it sends signals up to our brain and activates different hormones. There's ghrelin and leptin and CCK, all these different hormones, and you don't have to remember those. There's no test or anything, but those are the little those nerves send signals to our brain, activating those different types of hormones, and that's what makes us give us that feeling of fullness, the satiety, of being satiated. So that's one mechanism that we have. And if you think about it, well, what if that's the only mechanism we had? How would that play out? Well, think about if you filled your stomach full of water and you just drank a big, like a half gallon of water or something, you completely filled up your stomach. That would stretch out the stomach as well and send those same signals to your brain and tell you you're full. But if you think about it, gosh, that wouldn't be very smart, would it? Or a very smart design, because, well, if you felt full and you didn't want to eat for a while because of that, we would starve to death because there's no calories in the water. So we actually need a second mechanism to kind of back it up, or to play a role as well. And luckily we do. We have it's actually also sensors inside the stomach. And there's different names for it. There's density receptors, richness receptors, even calorie density receptors. So there's receptors that can tell how rich or calorie dense a food is that's inside of our stomach. And the little experiment I like to do while you're sitting there is go ahead and each of you hold up both your fists in front of you. So let's say in your left fist you have kale, and in your right fist you have cheesecake. So they're both the same size, right? They take up the same amount of space in your stomach. So you can put your fist down now. I just wanted you to kind of visualize that. And so if you ate each of those at different times, you ate the fist size of the kale and you ate the fist size of the cheesecake, which one do you think would fill you up better, the kale or the cheesecake? So it's not a trick question. You probably got the answer right. It's the cheesecake, right? Because we've all eaten the cheesecake, and you know how you eat something really rich like that, and you're kind of like, I'm full, right? Kind of get that feeling of fullness, because our stomach knows the difference. You ate that kale, and it would take up the same amount of space, but because it's only about 70 calories and a whole pound of kale, an hour later you'd be hungry again, because there's just not much richness there. There's not many calories. And so you eat the cheesecake, your body knows the difference. Your body knows, wow, that's a big load of calories in that fist size of cheesecake. So that's an example of that richness receptor doing its job, right? So So just kind of keep those tucked in the back of your mind. You have these stretch receptors and we have these richness receptors in our stomach to make us feel full, and to, we get hungry and then we want to eat, and then we have these mechanisms satisfied so that we can feel full. And it's, these things are really important to understand when you start to learn about calorie density, which we're going to get into in a minute here. So there's other things that contribute to how our eating behavior, other than just feeling hungry and eating and satisfying our hunger drive. There's food, there's food addiction and behavior. There's emotions that get involved, mental and physical. So we have a lot of other components that contribute to our eating and our eating behavior. And I'll get into more of that in 2 weeks when we talk about the food addiction and the behavior change aspect. But so just kind of wanting to, pay homage to that as well. It's not just, physiological, there's also psychological aspects that get into it as well. And so then next I want to talk about some of the resources that you have, not only from what you're going to learn in class tonight, but going forward to kind of add to your learning with this topic of weight management. So we're going to talk about Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Diet, and his 21 Tweaks app on his Daily Dozen app on the phone, that you can get on your smartphone. So I'm going to go exit out of this for just a second and go back to the website here so I can show you a couple things. So on the website, we have, under the resources, the books. So if you hover over resources and go down here to books, you can see some of the books that we recommend from class. So here's How Not to Diet, and that's a good book by Dr. Greger. And why it's so great is he taps into the evidence-based weight loss science, basically. And I think it's so important to mention this because, we all know about all the diets, there are all the diet commercials and all the different diet plans that are out there and whatnot. And, those diet plans, they do work because, they wouldn't be having a big ad campaign and do what they say if they didn't work, because people wouldn't buy these plans or books and things like that if it didn't work. Problem is, it's whether or not it's sustaining is where sometimes it's lacking. If sometimes you can get some short-term success, but then it doesn't really fix the problem, and so that goes very deep. But that's why they don't work long-term a lot of times. But you hear about these diets and these different things, even supplements and different things that you see commercials for and whatnot, because they do work in the short term, but they make a lot of money off of this stuff, and so they can have an ad campaign. So what's different about Dr. Greger and How Not to Diet and the 21 Tweaks that I'll show you here in a minute as well, is that this is like the little gems in the science. So what that means is that there are really good studies, even good randomized controlled trials, really high levels of evidence of different things that can help you lose weight. But it's usually things that are really cheap, like this specific herb or this type of food or this behavior you can change to do this or that at different times to actually show to lose weight as well. The reason you don't hear about it is because it's cheap. There's no profit to be made from it. But it's in the nutritional science, it's in the good studies, but nobody's going to promote it because there's no profit to be made from it. So that's what's so important about getting this How Not to Diet book, or I'll show you his lecture you can watch on his website, as well as the free app for the Daily Dozen, which has the 21 tweaks for weight loss in it. And I really just encourage you guys to use those resources, because this is good science. It's actually good data behind it. It's just you don't hear about it, again, because there's just no money to be made off of it. So that's why you don't see a commercial for it or whatever. So I kind of wanted to give you that kind of inside scoop on that. And then, so that's the book. And then if we go also in resources, he also has the cookbooks. So these are some of our favorite cookbooks, but there's the How Not to Die cookbook. And Dr. Greger also has the How Not to Diet cookbook. So those are good resources. And then I want to show you on his website, we go to nutritionfacts.org. There's that there. And if you scroll down on the homepage, I mean, if you can look, he actually has a bunch of videos just on weight loss, if you do a search for that. But also right here, this is what I wanted to really show you, is this, the evidence-based weight loss lecture. So if you didn't want to buy the book because you don't want to spend the money on it or whatever, or even the cookbook, and you just want to get kind of the gems from basically from the How Not to Diet book itself, you can watch this lecture. I think it's like a little over an hour long. So you can just click right here and watch Dr. Greger lecture. It's a kind of an academic level lecture, but about the evidence-based weight loss. So you can check that out. And then also on here, he has the Daily Dozen app. Of course, I have it on our website too. Let's see. Maybe I could just go back to our web. Oh, here it is. Daily Dozen. This is for Android. This is for the iPhone. So if you go to the Daily Dozen, you can download it for free. And Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen. And then he also has the 21 tweaks are in there. And it says right here, includes 21 tweaks from the new book. So what that is basically essentially, it's like the cliff notes of the entire book. So if you didn't want to read the whole book to learn all the 21 tweaks for weight loss, and you just want to know what they are, you can get them for free on his Daily Dozen app. There's a little section for 21 tweaks, and you click on it, and it has a little eye for information, and it tells you what each of the 21 tweaks are and all the details about it. So I wanted to kind of give you a heads up on all of that. And then let's see, yeah, let's go back to the lecture here now, the PowerPoint. Okay. Forward. So next I want to talk about what is calorie density. And so calorie density, this is one of my favorite things to talk about because it is so liberating. I've had so many patients that I did a survey of all the years that I was doing one-on-one appointments in the clinic with patients before we were doing these classes, is I would have different topics I would cover in each of the office visits. And one of the ones I talked about was calorie density. And I did a survey a while later to the people that went through my formal program, and almost every one of them, the favorite class or favorite thing that they learned that they felt was the most useful was this topic of calorie density, because it is so universal and really liberating when you learn about it. So what calorie density is simply the number of calories in a given weight of food. So basically, whether it's a gram, like in science, when we're doing studies on calorie density, which there are like over 100 studies that have been done on calorie density, and about half of them were done out of Penn State University by Dr. Barbara Rolls. She's a dietitian, and it's really, really amazing data from that. And usually they use grams when they do feeding studies. And a lot of these studies, it's really, really interesting. They'll do these 30-day feeding studies, sometimes longer, and people volunteer for these. And what they do is they'll lock them up in like a 5-star hotel. And so they control everything, their exercise, their exercise activities, exactly what they're eating, how much they're eating, and basically really detailed. So it's really in a really controlled environment. And you get a lot of good data from that. And so grams are, is what they use in the studies, but we all kind of have a hard time understanding what grams are, right? Like what's 100 grams of food look like, or 20 grams or 200 grams, what's that really look like? And so the way we teach it is in calories per pound, because we all know what a pound looks like, right? So if you think about, if you took 2 small Yukon Gold potatoes, for example, and you put them on the weight scale at the grocery store, that's about a pound. So you kind of have a visualization of, oh, that's a pound of food. And so then when you learn how many calories are in that pound, then it kind of gives you some perspective. And so we'll get into more details on that. And then I'm going to go into this article and graph, but I wanted to show you one more time at the website really quick before I actually explain this chart. I want to go back to the website really quick again. Let me, takes a second here. Quick back to the website. And I'll show you that you have access to that graph. So if you go back here to resources and go to the handouts section, click on handouts. And then there's a really good article here, Calorie Density Approach for Lifelong Weight Management. So if you click on that, this is just an article written by Jeff Novick, dietitian, about what calorie density is. So if you have some confusion or aren't really sure what it is, even after we talk tonight, you can go back and read this article, and it just explains to you exactly what calorie density is and how it can be beneficial for lifelong weight management. So there's that. So that's there on the website. And then also here's the calorie density graph. So if you click on that, here it is. You can make it look bigger if you download the PDF. So you have access to this. You can print it out, put it on your refrigerator, especially if you have a color printer, it would be better. But so there's that there. I just wanted to make sure you guys understood that you have access to that there. So that's the last time I got to go back to that. We'll just stick to the PowerPoint now. So calorie density. So the first time I'm going to kind of orient you to this graph, and then we're going to go over this in detail. And then after I go over this in detail, then I'm going to show you a couple of excerpts from Jeff Novick's full lecture. So actually, I will go back to the website one more time at the very end, because I want to show you where Jeff Novick's lecture is on the website, because I recommend everybody watches that lecture after tonight's class. Watch that lecture, and then I tell all my patients at work as well that until you've reached your goal weight, I recommend you watch that lecture every 3 months. And then if you ever start to regain, once you do achieve your goal weight, and if you start gaining weight back, then I tell you to watch it again. So I usually just say just watch it every 3 months, because it's so valuable. And I'm going to show you some short segments of that lecture tonight, but I just want to let you know that after that, it's really good. You might really want to go back and watch the full hour, 19-minute lecture that of Jeff Novick, the dietitian. And he's the one that came up with this graph here. And Charlie will show you a different version of the calorie density chart next week from Chef AJ. It's exactly the same, just kind of presents it in a little different way. So we try to communicate this in different ways, because everyone learns a little differently. So this is calorie density graph. So what I want to orient you here, and we got down here on the left-hand side, vegetables. It says 100 calories, and these are all calories per pound. And so vegetables are about 100 calories a pound. And then that's the least calorie dense food on the planet. And the most calorie dense food or substance on the planet is oil. 100% fat is 4,000 calories a pound. So if I don't know how good you guys are at math, but if you can see that, okay, so I mentioned earlier, kale is about 70 calories per pound, and then oil is 4,000 calories a pound. So if you were to take every food at the grocery store and line it up end to end, from least calorie dense to most calorie dense, can you see that there's more than a 40-fold difference between the foods that are the least calorie dense and the foods that are the most calorie dense? So oil being the most. So whether it's olive oil, canola oil, or coconut oil, or motor oil, it's going to be 4,000 calories per pound. And so you can see that, kale is less than 100, so 70 to 4,000, that's a more than 40-fold difference in the calorie density from least calorie dense to most calorie dense. And so, but it's per pound. And so I know the first time I looked at this chart, I know Jeff Novick says the same thing. First time I looked at this chart, I'm thinking, well, who cares? I don't ever eat a pound of oil or a pound of butter. A pound of butter is 3,200 calories. Or I don't ever eat a pound of bread, which is 1,200 calories. So what's it matter? Well, you're going to realize it really does matter, because if you're trying to count calories, which is an inexact science and very difficult, very labor intensive, and not very fun to do, you would have to know exactly the amount of every food you're eating, and the serving size, and how many, so then to figure out how many calories you're eating. But with calorie density, it doesn't matter necessarily how much of anything you eat. You just want to know what's the calorie density of the foods that you're eating, because what you're going to learn here, the first lesson is the foods on the left-hand side, which are low in calorie density, you're always going to be full before you ever eat too many calories. Whereas the foods on the right-hand side of the chart, that are high in calorie density, you're always going to eat too many calories before you'll ever feel too full. Is that, can you kind of see that? Does that kind of make sense in the early stages here? Because it's, you know, you're going to see, so it's calories per given weight of food, in this case, calories per pound. And so it's, so you don't have to worry about, you know, how much of a particular food you're eating or whatever. You don't have to weigh it or count the calories or any of that. You just you're going to try to choose the foods that are low in calorie density, because you know you'll be safe, because you're going to be full before you'll ever eat too many calories. And that's where you're going to see where the whole plant foods reside, is on the left-hand side of the chart. So we're going to go through each one of these things one by one here, just so you have an idea. So I already talked about vegetables that are at 100 calories a pound. And you can see here we got green, yellow, and red light. I know it's kind of similar to the green, yellow, and red, but not exactly same as the traffic light handout, green, yellow, and red, but it's similar, but I'll explain going forward here. But so fruit down here is at 300 calories a pound, and these are averages. So there's going to be some variation between certain fruits and certain vegetables and different things within the category. So you don't have to necessarily know the calorie density of every food you're eating specifically, but just by category. So your vegetables are about 100 calories a pound average. Your fruit's about 300 calories per pound average. And then tubers is the next one over there. That would be your potatoes, sweet potatoes would be your tubers, right? They're about 400 calories a pound. So that's really not that high. Whole grains, which would be like your brown rice, your oats, your quinoa, your bulgur, farro, amaranth, all your ancient whole grains, they're about 500 calories a pound. And then you can see there tofu gets a yellow light reading just because it is just minimally processed. That's why it gets the yellow, and it's a little high in fat. But it's still about 500 calories a pound, so not too terribly bad. And then there's your legumes. That's your beans, peas, chickpeas, split peas, lentils. Those are your legumes. They're average about 600 calories a pound. And then pasta, actually, well, this one really surprises people. Pasta is only about 600 calories per pound. And just to kind of jump ahead from pasta, you're probably thinking you're confused about that, because then you look over at bread further over to the right is 1,200 calories a pound. So you're probably thinking, and it's yellow light. So you're kind of thinking, well, you kind of think of bread and pasta as being similar, right? Are any of you surprised that the calorie density of bread is twice that of pasta? And I'll just go ahead and give you the answer here. So, I mean, I can, if someone wants to unmute, you can tell me, why do you think, what is it about pasta that makes it half the calorie density of bread? Anyone have an answer? Anyone wants to unmute?
Does it absorb water?
Perfect, A+, you got that. So pasta, when it's cooked, this is all cooked and ready to eat food, it sucks up water. So that's the difference. So pasta is only 600 calories a pound, whereas bread is dry, and bread is 1,200 calories a pound. So that doesn't necessarily make bread unhealthy, it just makes it higher in calorie density. So the one thing I want to, before I keep going through this chart here, one thing I want to help you understand is that, so calorie density can't tell you whether a food is healthy or not. It can't tell you whether a food is fattening or not. It can just tell you how likely are you going to overeat that particular food. If you eat too much of it, would you eat too many calories before you feel full? That's really what the beauty of calorie density. That's what calorie density can tell you, because kind of jumping ahead again over here, if you look far to the right, nuts and seeds there, you see that 2,800 calories per pound. So that would make you think, well, nuts and seeds, why are they still yellow? Because look how high the calorie density is. Well, nuts and seeds are healthy, that's why they get the yellow light. But if you only ate 1 or 2 nuts or seeds, if you ate 2 almonds, would that be fattening? No, because it's only 2 of them. But how likely are you going to eat? Does anyone ever eat 1 or 2 cashews or 1 or 2 almonds, right? It's like you're more likely going to eat too many calories if you're eating nuts and seeds. So that's why the calorie density is so high. So that's an important point there. So let's go backwards back to where we left off at pasta. Avocados are a yellow light food as well because they are pretty high in fat and they're at 700 calories a pound. And then this might surprise you guys. So poultry, eggs, and fish are only about 700 calories a pound. So they do get the red light because, you know, things you learn from this class, you know, because of the there's no fiber and there's, you know, the TMAO story, the saturated fat, the cholesterol, the inflammation these foods can cause. So that's why it gets the red light. But when it comes to calorie density, it's not that high. It's only about 700 calories a pound. And if you were to go back 100 years, it would probably be even a little bit less. You know, the eggs and the fish and the poultry maybe 100 years ago were even leaner than they are today. And so you could probably say that they were even a little bit less than 700 calories a pound. And then beef there is 1,000 calories a pound. And if you took the average steak at a restaurant is about 1,200 calories a pound. So that's getting a little high because of this a little bit higher in fat. But so I have a lot of patients would say, well, why does it get a red light? You know, just based on calorie density because it's not that high in calorie density. And it's because of all those other things I mentioned is the reason. But this is another interesting point. So if you went back, maybe let's go 150 years ago now, just because of how much further in time we are now. I used to always just say 100 years, but now maybe it should be a little bit further. But basically going back at least to the pre-World War II era, the early 1900s, maybe like Charlie's chart that he showed what we were eating in 1900 versus 2010, probably more accurate. But you know, back in those days, people were eating poultry, eggs, and fish, and lots of green and yellow light foods as well. But you very rarely saw anyone that was overweight back in those days. And this chart will actually help you kind of realize that. Well, what's missing from the diets of people in the early 1900s that you see on this chart? Well, there wasn't a lot of processed food back then because we really didn't start processing food until World War II. So when we started doing K rations and processing food to be able to ship food overseas and to, you know, for convenience and things, basically the processed food industry really didn't start until during and after World War II. So yeah, there was some sugar, there was some baked goods and things, and there was butter and a few things like that, but we didn't really have lots of refined sugars and flours and all the different products and convenience foods and stuff that we have today. So you very rarely ever saw overweight people in the early 1900s. And that's a lot of the reason, because the red light foods people were eating back then were not that high in calorie density. Like I said, even probably lower than 700 calories a pound, because there was leaner versions of the eggs and fish, eggs and chicken especially, and beef even back then than there is now. So just an interesting thing. One thing I always try to tell people, because sometimes our eyes have so changed, our lenses have changed so much for what is considered a normal weight these days, because almost 80% of us are either overweight or obese in this country. Because of that statistic, kind of what's viewed as normal has changed so much. And all you really have to do is go back and watch a pre-World War II movie. So go watch a movie like ones with Humphrey Bogart, Danny Kaye, Jimmy Stewart. Kind of go back and watch some of those 1930s, early 1940s, or even late 1920s, early 1930s movies. Everyone was really thin. You almost look at those movies and the people and you think, gosh, they're just sickly thin looking. And it's like, because that's actually normal. That's actually what we have now is not normal. And so, because a lot of times people will think that, and Charlie get this, and I get this in class all the time, where friends and relatives of people that are eating a plant-based diet, they're losing weight, and they're like afraid to lose more weight because their friends and family are saying, what, do you have cancer? Why are you're getting so thin or whatever? It's like, well, that's why Charlie and I always ask, well, what's your body mass index? What's your BMI? If it's above 19, that's actually normal. Normal is 19 to 24. That's actually a normal BMI. And sometimes when people are worried about being too thin, their BMI is still like 20 or 21 or 22. Like mine's 23, and I get people, so I'm closer to being overweight than underweight. And I still get people that will think I'm too thin, I look too thin or something. It's like, no, it's just what's become normal to our eyes has changed so much. And I think that's an important point too, whether you're trying to get to a more ideal weight, or if you're already pretty close. And I just wanted to throw that out there for you guys as well. All right, so let's move along here. So we went through poultry, eggs, and fish, and the beef. Tortillas are 1,000 calories a pound, so we're getting up towards the bread category. Ice cream, 1,000 calories a pound. We talked about the bread. The dried fruit, 1,200 calories a pound. So here's another example of kind of like the pasta and the bread thing. So why do you think that why is fruit 300 calories a pound, but dried fruit is 1,200 calories a pound? Same reason, right? No water, right? And so that doesn't make dried fruit unhealthy in any way. It's still got all the fiber, it's still got all the nutrients, but it doesn't have the water. So it'd be really easy to overeat too many calories with the dried fruit, but it would be essentially impossible to eat too many calories with regular fresh fruit because of the water content and all the chewing that has to go on, and it takes a while and whatnot. And the other thing too is, as we're going along here, is the foods that are low in calorie density are also high in nutrient density. So you get the best of both worlds. You get lots of nutrients, lots of the good fats, the protein, the vitamins, the minerals, the phytonutrients, the antioxidants. You get all the nutrients at a low calorie cost. So you get high nutrient value per calorie. So high nutrients, low calorie. And whereas the foods on the right-hand side of the chart, you're getting high calories, low nutrients. So you're getting low amounts of nutrients at a high calorie cost. That's another important point. And then now over to cheese. Cheese is 1,700 calories a pound, which is the same as sugar. So just pure sugar is 1,700 calories a pound. Cookies are 2,000 calories a pound. Chips are 2,300 calories a pound. And we already talked about the nuts and the seeds, the butter and the oil. Another little kind of example, I want to show you how calorie density works with whether something is refined or unrefined. So if you basically take a whole grain like a wheat berry. So just think about, I know people don't necessarily boil wheat berries and eat a big bowl of wheat berries, but so you take a wheat berry that's growing out in the field, it's about 500 calories a pound, right? So what happens if you refine it down into flour? And then you add some water and you add some yeast and you bake it in the oven. What's it become? Bread, right? So now bread, so you took that whole grain that was 500 calories a pound, now you've made it into bread, it's 1,200 calories a pound because of the refining of the flour. Now what happens if you take the same flour and you add a little bit of sugar, that's 1,700 calories a pound, you add a little bit of butter, that's 3,200 calories a pound, or maybe some oil, and then you bake that. What does that sound like? It sounds like a cookie, right? Right? And so a cookie is 2,000 calories a pound. So you see what happens as you add more high calorie density foods and you kind of add something or change something, refine something, the calorie density goes up as you do more to it. So if you take things away, like strip the fiber out, or you refine it or add things into it like butter or sugar or oil, you're going to increase the calorie density. Is that kind of making you guys kind of seeing this a little bit? So I think I want to go over one other example before I actually start to show you guys examples of foods and the differences of the calorie density of different foods. One other thing I think is really important, I like to utilize this chart for to kind of give you an example. So have you guys heard of the different weight loss programs like 600 Pound Life? You've ever heard of that show or seen that show? Dr. Nowzard and the weight loss surgeon, for example. So he's notorious, he's down in Houston, Texas. He's famous so he does the weight loss surgery, but he puts patients on a 1,200 calorie a day diet. So a lot of weight loss surgeons will do this. And of course he usually recommends low carb kind of a diet, high protein, low carb. So, it's good as far as he's, having people avoid processed foods and sugar and things like that, which is good. There's other reasons it's not so good because of, people are still eating cheese and meat and sausage and things like that, which isn't so healthy for the body. But it's a calorie restricted diet. It's not really about the nutrition. It's about calorie restriction because he's trying to help these people to lose weight, get prepared for their weight loss surgery and change their eating behavior and whatnot. But so 1,200 calorie a day diet's what it's kind of what he's famous for. And there's lots of calorie restricted diets out there that you may have heard about. And portion controlling, eat less, exercise more messaging, all that kind of stuff. But so let's just do a 1,200 calorie a day diet, and let's see how what we learned earlier and how calorie density plays into this. So going back to appetite, remember what we talked about, the stretch receptors and the nutrient density receptors in the stomach. So your body doesn't care what you're eating on this chart. It's as far as your appetite goes, your body does not care. It just wants its stretch receptors activated to fill up your stomach, and it wants enough nutrients, enough calories to make you feel full and satisfied. That's the only thing your body requires when it comes to an appetite standpoint. So again, your body doesn't care what you choose on this list. Just give me my 3 pounds of food, or I'm going to talk about that in a second. Give me enough food volume and give me enough calories to make you satisfied. So the other aspect is that we tend to eat a similar amount of food from day to day. So in these feeding studies, people tend to eat a similar amount of food from day to day. And it ends up being about 3 to 5 pounds of food is what most people eat in a day. And a lot of it depends on your body size, your muscle mass, your metabolism, your activity levels. A lot of different things go into that. But from day to day, just know each individual, we all eat a similar amount of food individually from day to day. And let's just, to make the math easy and to make it simple, let's just go with 3 pounds. So say you're just a fairly small, fairly sedentary average person eating about 3 pounds of food a day. And some people eat again a little bit more. And so I'd be, if you ate 3 meals a day, that'd be about 1 pound of food per meal. So just to kind of make the math easy and kind of get it straight in your mind. Okay, so about 1 pound of food per meal. About 1 pound of food kind of fills up my stomach. I feel pretty full with 1 pound of food in my stomach, and I'll eat those 3 meals a day. And so that's what the body wants. It wants that pound of food in the stomach to stretch it out. As long as there's enough calories in that pound of food, you're gonna be golden. And again, your body doesn't care what on this chart it's eating. And so let's kind of keep that in our minds as we talk about this 1,200 calorie diet and the differences here. So if you have 2 different people, both eating 1,200 calories, okay? And so person A is eating 1,200 calories, person B is eating 1,200 calories. So if you're eating the standard American diet, let's just say you're eating, a few fruits and vegetables, but lots of bread and tortillas and cheese and, some chips and cookies and, fast food, burgers, fries, pizza, all the kind of the usual standard American fare. If you were to average out the typical standard American diet, it's somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 calories per pound. That's about what the average standard American diet is, because you can kind of visualize that by looking at the chart here, right? If you're looking at what a standard American diet entails, it's mostly foods on the right-hand side of the chart. So you guys agree with that? You look at those foods on there. So let's just say, okay, let's just say I'm eating a lot of fast food and stuff like that, and I'm eating 1,500 calories a pound. Well, if I'm only eating 1,200 calories because I'm on this calorie restricted diet, how much food am I actually eating? So if I'm eating 1,500 calories per pound and I'm eating 1,200 calories, how much food am I eating by weight? Can you see that would be less than 1 pound? Does that make sense? Yeah. So you're eating probably 3/4 of a pound of food in that day. And to only eat 1,200 calories if you're eating the standard American diet, that's about 1,500 calories a pound. So how happy do you think your appetite is going to be? Remember how we said your body wants that 3 pounds of food to stretch out your stomach, and then it's getting enough calories, so your density receptors are happy, but your actual stretch receptors in your stomach are not happy at all, and that's the primary mechanism. That's even takes precedence over the richness receptor, the calorie density receptor. But so think about that. If you're eating only maybe a quarter to a third of a pound of food at 3 meals, that's hardly any food volume in your stomach, and you're going to be hungry all the time. And no wonder it's impossible to sustain a calorie restricted diet, because you're fighting your hunger drive all the time. You're constantly going to be hungry. And the other problem with that is that when you're eating such a small amount of food, our body kind of goes into starvation mode. It kind of goes into fat conservation mode. So your body holds on to every ounce of fat it can because it thinks it's starving, because it kind of is. You're not giving it the volume of food to stretch out the stomach to activate those hormones we talked about to make you feel satisfied, satiated, right? And so now let's go to person B that's also eating 1,200 calories. Person B is eating, let's say, a whole food plant-based diet. And you see that green arrow that's going down there at about 500 calories a pound that comes down from the top, you see that? And so if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, if you're eating, like Charlie's eating, even probably a little bit lower than calorie density than I am, because I'm eating some avocados, I'm eating occasionally some tortillas and some, I probably eat more, nut butters and nuts and seeds than probably Charlie does. So my calorie density is probably over 500 calories a pound or so. But if you're eating, just oatmeal for breakfast and steamed kale and broccoli and other whole grains and potatoes and sweet potatoes, and eating a really, basically just how we're teaching, a whole food plant-based diet, nothing processed at all, and even avoiding like the refined breads and tortillas and some of the nut butters and things like that and the oil and all that, you're probably only eating about 400 calories a pound, even that little bit lower than that 500 calorie a pound green arrow there. And so if you're eating 400 calories a pound, person B, and they're eating 1,200 calories, how much food is that person eating? Do a little math there. So 400 calories per pound, 1,200 calories. So how many times does 400 go into 1,200? 3 times, right? So you're eating 3 pounds of food. There you go. So person B is eating 3 pounds of food. They feel full, they feel satisfied. Their stretch receptors are happy, their density receptors are happy, as long as they're not eating, as long as they're getting some starchy vegetables in there, because you can see how you could kind of go too far with this. If you were eating only fruits and vegetables and not getting your potatoes and sweet potatoes and beans and whole grains in there, you might be down around 200 or 300 calories a pound. And you would have to eat to get 1,200 calories. Let's say you're eating nothing but fruits and vegetables, which would average out at 200 calories a pound, between the 100 and the 300. If you're eating 200 calories a pound to get 1,200 calories, you'd have to be eating, what would that be? So that would be like, 6 pounds of food, right? You'd have to eat 6 pounds of food in a day to get 1,200 calories. So you'd be like a cow chewing all day long just to get the enough calories in. So that's why it's so important to get those starchy vegetables, potatoes, sweet potatoes, whole grains, beans and legumes and things like that. So I wanted to just give you that example. And then the other thing too that's really important is that basically the person B that's eating the high volume of food, they're actually revving their metabolism, they're revving their engine. So they're actually losing body fat because their body is happy. It's not thinking it's starving, it's actually stoking the engine, kind of like throwing coal into the steam engine, a steam train engine. You're throwing the fuel into the fire and you're actually burning fat. You're actually your metabolism's going because you're eating a larger volume of food that's low in calorie density, whereas person A, as we mentioned earlier, is not eating enough food to really stoke that engine, and their body's holding on to every ounce of fat that they have. So a lot of times people that are eating so little because they're eating too high in calorie density, they're eating such a small amount of food, they're not losing any weight, and they're trying to figure out why. Well, it's because they're not eating enough volume of food that's low in calorie density. So you actually need to eat more to weigh less in some respects there. So I know that was a long segment there. I'll give a break here for everybody before I get into the videos here. I want to leave open for any questions that anyone has on this chart specifically. Go ahead and unmute and ask any questions. I'll give you guys a breather here. Remember, you can always go back and watch this again and then also watch the Jeff Novick full video. But any questions about calorie density, what it is, and how to use this chart?
So Scott, here's a good question.
Yeah.
With this chart in mind, how do people doing keto, with all their, meat and cheese and eggs, how do they lose weight?
Yeah, so the main reason you lose weight on a low carb ketogenic diet is because you are avoiding a lot of the foods on the right-hand side of the chart. So you're avoiding refined sugars and flours, and a lot of times, sometimes they try to restrict oil, but they do often have a little bit of oil. And so the main reason you do lose weight is, number one, is because you actually do cut out a lot of calories by cutting out like chips and cookies and crackers and bread and things like that. So you are cutting out a lot of higher calorie density foods. So that usually equates to the weight loss. The weight loss you get in the first few weeks is mostly water weight, because if you cut your carbohydrates low enough, you lose all your glycogen stores in your liver and in your muscles. And then with each molecule of carbohydrate that gets basically dumped out from the glycogen stores, there's water that goes with it. So you tend to lose a lot of water weight in the beginning. And then you do lose some body fat because you're burning a little bit of fat as well. Because if you actually are in ketosis, which is hard to sustain, and most people that do low carb keto diets don't sustain ketosis for very long because it's really difficult to do. And so most of the reason that people lose weight in the short term is the water weight. Most of the weight lost in the first year is the body fat you do lose. It's because you have cut down calories by cutting out a lot of the processed foods. So that's what the studies show. And actually, they also did some metabolic experiments where people on that sustained low carb keto diets for a year, they actually lost muscle. Some of their weight loss is also muscle loss because of the low carb nature of because how low in carbs the diet was, and you actually lose some fat, but you lose some muscle as well. So, but then if you compare ketogenic diets to other types of diets, it's no better after. So once you get to a year and beyond, it's no better than any other diet as far as you're just strictly looking at weight loss. So yeah, you are eating some higher fat foods, which comes with consequences as far as heart disease and cancer. And we'll talk more about that when we have our classes on nutritional myths and other popular diets, and Charlie's class on the diet wars. We'll talk about keto diets in a little more detail at that time.
Scott?
Yeah.
I have a question. A number of years ago, I was very successful at eating like this, but the one thing that I kept that I don't any longer, but I'm curious now, was ghee. I would make my own ghee. And so what happens to, I mean, I realize that it's still oil. I mean, what you're doing is burning off the milk fats, but what happens to that calorie density of butter when you turn it into ghee? Because that would
oil probably go up, I would imagine. I mean, because the worse is oil. And just another example with the oil is, you're thinking, well, it's hard to visualize a pound of olive oil, but a tablespoon of olive oil is 120 calories. So if you put that into perspective, 1 tablespoon of olive oil at 120 calories, that has more calories than a whole pound of vegetables. So you see that there?
Yeah.
So if you're trying to lose weight, you want to avoid the ghee and the oil and the butter and things like that, because it's the lowest in nutrients, highest in calories. So it's kind of the epitome of a junk food is
yeah.
butter. Yeah.
Well, I guess, I mean, I lost almost 80 pounds. So, I mean, I was successful at that. And I think it must have been that I was using such low volumes of it, that I wasn't eating that much of it. That's all I can think of. But I've given up ghee too, so I don't do any of that.
It's like Dr. McDougall says, the fat we eat is the fat we wear. So fat is the metabolic dollar to use it for a later time. And so if we eat fat, we store the fat. But again, when people are cutting out, even if they are eating butter and oil and cheese and some of these higher calorie dense foods, high in fat, to be high fat, high protein, low carb, you are still cutting out quite a few calories by cutting out the processed refined sugars and flours. So that's again why most people do lose weight on that kind of a diet.
I see. Thank you.
Welcome. So now I want to show you, unless there's any other questions, I want to show you some examples. So what you're going to see in these 2 videos coming up is Jeff Novick, the dietitian. He's going to show on the right-hand side and the left-hand side, he'll show 2 different foods, and they're both the same amount of calories. And he's going to talk about which is going to fill you up more, the one on the right or the one on the left. And so you're going to see calorie density in action here, and the things that contribute to whether something is high in calorie density or lower in calorie density. So any other questions before I move to that? Guess I wasn't on the, hope you guys could see that okay. I realized I wasn't on the larger screen. All right, let's watch Jeff Novick here. Here we go.
Foods equal calories. All you got to do is see which one is more filling. Okay. So we got 2 little soy chicken nuggets, and we got 1 1/4 cups of vegetable lentil soup. Don't say anything yet. There are people still thinking on this one, okay? We'll give them a few minutes. Everybody think they got an answer? Which one do you think? The soup. Now, if you went to medical school or dietetic school, or you studied biochemistry and physiology, they would tell you all different things about what fills you up. You might hear about chemicals and hormones and enzymes like CCK and ghrelin, and leptin. You might hear fat is more filling and all these other things, right? Just forget about it. Just pretend you just walked in off the street, which I think many of you did. You just walked in off the street. You don't know anything about biochemistry, chemistry, food, or anything. Just take a wild guess. What do you think it is about the vegetable lentil soup that will fill you up more than the soy chicken nuggets? Anybody? Volume. Man, there's just more of it. And it turns out that's right. They actually did these studies where they fed people equal calories of food to see which was the most filling. And they did it short-term, long-term, subjective, and objectively. So pretty good studies. And they found out that all foods that fill you up have 3 things in common. And can anybody guess what number 1 was? Reading my props, huh? Number 1 was water. And that kind of makes sense, because what does water take up a lot of? Space. And filling up the space in the stomach actually contributes to satiety. Because as you'll learn more about this weekend, on the outside of the stomach, you have these little nerves called stretch receptors. And when you fill the stomach up, they stretch a little, they send signals to the brain, which help release all those chemicals telling you you're, right? Don't you all like to get that feeling of full? So water is very important. Water helps, gives you that. And water also has a lot of weight, which helps give that stretch. Because some things have lots of volume, but they don't have a lot of weight, right? Like air. So water was very important. Anybody want to guess what number 2 was? That's right. Fiber. Now, fiber doesn't make sense when you think about it like water does, because fiber doesn't take up a lot of space. It doesn't have a lot of volume. But do you know what you get when you mix a lot of water and a lot of fiber together? You know what you get? You get a lot of, did you say gas? That's true. You get a lot of gas in the beginning, but you get something called bulk, right? And it turned out that bulk was the biggest contributor to your feeling full. Now, nutrients did play a role. You do have these nutrient receptors, and nutrients were important, but it turns out they're not the most important. So when they tell you to eat a diet high in protein or high in fat, because that'll fill you up the most, it's not true. I could take 2 foods with the exact same amount of protein in them, and guess which one will fill you up more? The one that has the most bulk, right? Think about that. So it's not just the protein or the fat, and I'm going to show you here in a minute. Okay, you ready? Okay, we have a cup of cashews, and we have 6 small baked potatoes. Do not say anything yet. So, with salsa. That's correct. Somebody, yeah, with salsa. We'll leave it at that. Okay, which one do you think will fill you up more? The potatoes. Why? What do the potatoes have more of that the cashews do? Bulk. Now, are these high in fat? Yeah, they're 75% fat. Is this low in fat? It's 1% fat. So is fat filling? No, not at all. Now, does this make cashews fattening? No, not necessarily. What if you ate just 1 or 2 cashews? That's not right. You're right. We know nobody does that. Okay, now I'm going to do some other comparisons. You ready? So this one was pretty easy. Enough said over there, right? Okay, look at this one. Oh, we did this one already, but I want to make another point. Is this high in fat? 70, 80%. Is this low in fat? Under 10. So is fat what filled you up? What filled you up? The both. Everybody got that? Here we go. 2 low-fat fig Newmans, not to mention anybody in particular, and 1 small cantaloupe. They're both 140 calories. You see the difference? Which would fill you up more? The cantaloupe. Now, let me ask you a question. In 1980, you heard you should go on a low-fat diet, right? So you go to the supermarket or the whole food store, and you find all these low-fat foods, and you fill up on those. Do you see the problem? If you eat all you want, what happened to your caloric intake? It's too high. But what if you eat just the right amount of calories? Then what's happened? Now you're hungry all day long. Is that going to happen with these foods? Now, just for the record, do you know that the percentage of fat, carb, and protein is almost identical? They almost have the same ratio. So is it the ratio or the amount of protein, the carb, or the fat that fills you up? Because those two are pretty equal. What fills you up more? Both. It's simple. Look at this one. Here's the... On the left, we have a 2-pound fresh pineapple. On the right, we have 4 ounces of gummy bears. Both are 450 calories. Now, I put this one up there because everybody's anti-sugar these days, right? You can't have sugar. Sugar's no good. Can't have carbs. And I think that's crazy because, you know, sugar's good for you. I mean, does everybody know what the best fuel for your body is? Gummy bears. Make a note of that. I got to fix the slide, okay? Gummy bears. Right. What's the fuel that your body runs on, the preferred fuel? Glucose. That's a fancy name for sugar. Now, your body will also burn another fuel. Anybody know what it is? Fat. Whoever said it is correct. The 2 fuels your body likes to burn, number 1 is sugar, number 2 is fat. Now, every now and then you hear somebody say, I need some energy. I got to get some protein. Right? You ever hear that? Well, just realize when somebody tells you that, they just told you they know nothing about physiology and biochemistry, because that's not what your body wants to use for energy. And in fact, it's a difficult process. Your body uses carbs first, and secondary is fat. So, you know, when you work out, some of you get exercise, your muscles burn up some carb, and they also burn up some fat. And some of us are looking to burn up a little bit more fat, right? But there's parts of your body that can't burn fat. Parts of your body can only burn sugar, glucose. And anybody know what part of your body it is? The brain. That's why I don't get it when people are so anti-sugar and they want to avoid sugar. I mean, I don't know about them, but my brain, very important to me. And it needs sugar every day. And they've actually done studies. I mean, there's recommended minimum intakes of sugar just to fuel the brain. Anybody know how much that is, the recommended minimum intake of sugar you need just to fuel the average brain? 500 calories a day just to fuel the average brain. Now, I had mine tested. Mine burns about 750 a day, but oh, I'm smart. You're very nice. Because the last time I was here, somebody raised their hand and said, why? Is yours less efficient? Why is that funny? He said, don't make fun of me. I have the props. Okay, so is sugar the problem or is the package the problem? I mean, these both have the same amount of calories and the same amount of sugar. Are they equal to you? No. What's 90% of the weight and volume of the pineapple you're going to eat there? Water, fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and a great package and great matrix, just right for you. What's 90% of the weight and the volume of this? Sugar. So is sugar the problem or the package it came in? It's the package. Don't be afraid of sugar. Once again, get it in its whole natural form. Now, what I think is the real irony is they take foods like this, they process and refine the heck out of them, so we're left with this white crystalline powder, which is sweet, but it doesn't really have a flavor. It's just sweet. So then they make it into things like this, but to get kids to eat it, what do they flavor it as? This. Does anybody see that irony? Just give them the pineapple. So then we have people who have been loading up on these for 20 years. They got heavy. And then what do they say? I can't eat pineapple. It has sugar in it. So, okay, here's a few more I just want to show you so you can get the point. Every one of them will be 200 calories. That's a pat of butter, in case you forgot what it looked like. And those are grapes, 200 calories, which would be better for you, which would be more filling, which would have more fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and everything. Okay, here we have a little bit of almonds. Here we have carrots. Same 200 calories. See the difference? So you see the problem if we put bowls of almonds out in the back? It's we would have this room packed. It's not that almonds are bad for you, but what would happen to all of you? We would overeat. And it's not your fault. So here we go again. French fries and honeydew melon. See the difference? Which would be better for you? The one on the right. Right. That's olive oil and sliced apples. Same calories. Which would fill you up more? Which would be healthier? Right. There's broccoli and pretzels. Are you drooling over the broccoli now or the pretzels? This was the red meat guy, so I'm trying to figure it out. See the difference? Now, I'm not saying you should only eat raw broccoli. I'm just making a point. And is everybody getting the point? Okay, good, because now it gets harder. Hershey Kisses and those little red peppers we occasionally have out the back. See why we put the peppers out? No. Okay, potato chips and celery. Every now and then somebody says, you know, I'm really enjoying this diet, but I would like something crunchy. And I'm like, eat crisp celery, it's very crunchy. And they say, no, I want something that's crunchy and kind of has like a salty flavor. So I said, eat crisp celery. It's crunchy and kind of has a salty flavor. And they say, no, that's not quite what I want. And I say, just admit it. You want potato chips. Okay.
All right. So 2 more slides here, and then we'll have some time for questions. So I wanted to kind of share with you the kind of what the results of those 100 studies show with these feeding experiments, manipulating the calorie density of the food. And these were these specific studies that were done to get these numbers. I'm going to go over here. Were ad libitum experiments, and what ad libitum means is in Latin it means eat as much as you want, so without restriction. So people were told to eat till they were comfortably full. Don't undereat, don't overeat. Just eat till you're comfortably full. And what it showed was foods that were 400 calories a pound or less, which you remember from the chart was pretty much all your green light foods, your fruits, vegetables, beans, whole grains. So foods that were 400 calories a pound or less, when you're averaging out at that, everyone lost weight, even the people that were completely sedentary. So they would also monitor how much people were exercising and controlling for that as well in these studies. And so even completely sedentary people, if you were eating 400 calories a pound or less, you could eat as much as you wanted and still lose weight, even if you're completely sedentary. And I've actually seen this with some of my patients. I've had patients that were wheelchair mobile. They couldn't exercise, they couldn't get out of the wheelchair, but yet they still had patients lose a lot of weight because they're eating 400 calories a pound or less. So so you can kind of remember these, jot these down, or refer back to this lecture if you want to get these numbers. 400 to 800 calories per pound, if you're eating in that range, everyone lost weight as long as you exercise at least 30 to 60 minutes per day. So if we're, doing our 30, 60 minutes of exercise per day, as Charlie and I recommend as part of lifestyle medicine, it's important to exercise. If you're eating between 400 and 800 calories a pound, which is pretty easy to do on a whole food plant-based diet, you'll still lose weight. When you're eating between 800 and 1200 calories per pound, pretty much everybody gained weight except for the really extremely heavy exercisers. And the heavy exercisers were able to lose a little bit of weight, but otherwise everybody else gained weight. And then at 1200 calories per pound and up, everybody gained weight, even the heavy exercisers. So this is a good example of my story. So when I remember my story in 2012, when I rode my bike to San Francisco in 6 days, and I rode 7,000 miles that year, I was obviously eating greater than 1200 calories per pound at that time. As you know, I was eating the standard American diet back then, and I was still gaining weight. It wasn't able to lose weight, or I was often maintaining my weight, but it was overweight. And so, I was a heavy exerciser. That tells me, yeah, I was definitely eating 1200 at least right around 1200 calories per pound. And so it's kind of easy round numbers, 400, just think of 400, 800, 1200, and basically just 400, 800, and 1200 is really the numbers you have to remember. And so you have complete control over, obviously we'll talk about the emotional side of things and the mental side of things in a couple of weeks, but you're just looking at what foods you're choosing to eat and how much activity you're getting. You have control over it. It's like, hey, I stopped losing weight. I lost a few pounds, but I stopped. But what's going on? So obviously you can, if you're eating the right foods, you can lower your weight by increasing your exercise. That will help, but it's the food that makes the biggest impact. And I have a sign in my office that says, fitness is 80% nutrition, 20% exercise. You can't outrun your fork. So your fork makes the biggest difference. I mean, exercise is great and we should do it, but you can just lower that calorie density. And in that article that Jeff Novick has, talks about dilution as a solution and ways to lower your calorie density. So it's pretty easy to kind of think about, okay, so if I add vegetables to whatever I'm eating, that's going to lower my calorie density. Whereas if I add oil or cheese or flour or sugar, something like those foods added to your meal, that's going to increase your calorie density. So you can kind of see if you're adding things that are on the right-hand side of the chart, you're going to increase the calorie density, make it harder to lose weight. You add things to the left-hand side of the chart, you're going to lower your calorie density of that meal. So there's all kinds of tricks in there. It talks about, and then also in Jeff Novick's video, which I want to show you on the website here real quick. And I already mentioned this earlier, I recommend watching the full Jeff Novick lecture every 3 months till you reach your goal weight, or if you ever start to regain weight back. But I want to show you really quick on the website where his lecture is. Since it's one of my favorites, that's why I wanted to put it on the website, because it's so important. So if you go to our class website and you go to videos, so there's the home page, you just click videos. So if you scroll down to the bottom here it is, Calorie Density Lecture by Jeff Novick. So just click that, watch that. And it includes everything you saw tonight, but a full-on lecture and a lot more examples. He talks about carbohydrates. He talks a little bit about a little bit more detail about calorie density and all of that. So I really highly recommend that. All right, well, that's all I have. Let me unshare my screen here. We can answer questions. Anything you guys want to talk about when it comes to calorie density? Does everyone kind of feel like they understand what calorie density is? I think that's the first question I have.
Before we do that, could you repeat what you said that sign was? The ending of it was, I can't overrun the fork, but what was the first part of that? Fitness?
Yeah, fitness is 80% nutrition, 20% exercise.
Thank you.
Can't outrun your fork. That's just one of my favorite to put it out up there, because I was living under that myth. I thought I could out exercise my weight and my health, and obviously, my story, I couldn't. So
thank you.
The exercise, yeah, you're welcome.
I'm a cyclist and I do a lot of cycling, and I keep thinking I can out pedal it, and I can't.
Yeah, I could when I was 18 years old, 20 years old, but yeah, not when I was in my 30s and early 40s. yeah, there's some comments I see in here. People watched that lecture, most of it today. And I would say I watched it probably the first 8 times I watched it. I picked up something new each time because there's so much detail in it. It's so good. And he's pretty entertaining too. He's easy to watch, and it's a lot of fun. But I would definitely recommend everyone watches that lecture. Other questions? I was looking in the chat to see if there was anything else. And we'll talk about calorie density again. Charlie will a little bit next week as well, just to kind of reinforce it. But again, in those 21 tweaks Dr. Greger has, the calorie density is just like one of those 21 tweaks. So there's so many other things that can help you to lose weight. But I think calorie density is the most, to me and to my patients I've taught to, is the most liberating thing, because it totally takes you away from that kind of eat less, exercise more, portion control, count calories. Kind of divorces you from all of that, and you can just go like, what's the calorie density of the foods I'm eating here? And just a few other examples, like you're eating spaghetti, like a whole wheat spaghetti, instead of a meat sauce or a marinara sauce, you just put in a bunch of vegetables into your sauce. And so maybe you have a smaller portion of the pasta with the tomato sauce with all the veggies in it, and then maybe instead of bread, or a larger portion of pasta, because the pasta is a little higher in calorie density. Of course, the meat and the cheese was really high in calorie density, so you got rid of that and added vegetables to lower the calorie density. But maybe instead of the bread or a larger size portion of the pasta, maybe you have some steamed broccoli or zucchini or something as a side dish with your pasta with the tomato sauce with the vegetables in it. So just by doing that, you removed the bread, which was 1,200 calories a pound, and you added more vegetables, which is 100 calories a pound. So you're eating even more volume of food than you would have with the bread and the larger portion of pasta, because you added more vegetables to it. So you volume-wise, you increase the volume of food you're eating, so you feel even more full, and you lowered the calorie intake because you lowered the calorie density. So that's an example of the dilution as the solution. And then also, like doing a soup, having a soup before your meal, drinking a glass of water before the meal, that actually also helps. Some of those things are in the 21 tweaks with Dr. Greger too.
So someone says peanut butter is nothing but oil, right?
Well, it's not just oil. It's 2,800 calories a pound, so it's less than the 4,000 because it does have a lot of fat. That's why it's so high in calorie density. But if you were comparing peanut butter to eating peanuts, you're going to get less calories from the peanuts than you are from the peanut butter, because you've mashed all the peanuts together and you absorb a lot more of it. Whereas when you eat whole peanuts, some of the little peanut pieces go down into the intestine and kind of get flushed down the toilet, so to speak, because you're not chewing it as finely as you would be chewing or eating down peanut butter. So even though you don't want to be necessarily snacking on peanuts either, because that's a lot of calories, right? If you're throwing a handful of peanuts on your salad or something, that would be fine because it's adding some good healthy fats. It's, nuts are good for you. It's just that if you just sat and ate nuts, you would overeat, just like Jeff Novick said. If you ate 1 or 2 peanuts, that'd be fine. But you go to Costco and they got these big giant jars of mixed nuts and nuts. I mean, you ate a couple of handfuls of that, oh my gosh, you'd be eating so many calories without even thinking about it.
So I like this one here in the chat. It says, so if I have big glasses of water with each piece of bread, I can eat my beloved bread a lot, right? Kidding.
All right.
What?
Again, whole grain bread, there's nothing unhealthy. It's not unhealthy. It's fine. It's just calorie density, 1,200 calories a pound. So you know those breakout numbers, right? So it's kind of like if you had a really tiny, like I still occasionally eat bread when we have some pasta or something, but I'll just try to have one little tiny small piece, and then when you go back for seconds or whatever, you go back for more vegetables rather than another piece of bread. So those are just kind of tips, like, okay, you eat the lower calorie density foods first. So that's why you eat the salad or the soup or whatever before you get to the entree, which may be a little bit higher in calorie density. So then if you're say you ate your soup or your salad and then you ate the entree, and it tried to have a smaller size entree because it was higher in calorie density, then you're still not quite full yet. Okay, we'll go back and have some more salad and more soup because that's even lower in calorie density, right? So there's these calorie preloads. Dr. Greger calls them meal preloads, which means eating something that's 100 calories a pound or less. You can kind of eat as much of that as you want before you eat something that you know is going to be a little higher in calorie density. So those are some of the tricks you can do. And you'll learn about those more in his book, or the 21 tweaks, or watch that lecture I showed you there on Dr. Greger's website. Highly recommend that. He's a really entertaining speaker as well, as you guys, most of you know. Other questions, comments? Was that surprising to anybody? Was that the first time you've heard about calorie density before?
No, Scott, you talk about it all the time, but we need to be reminded, because we like things like oatmeal and peanut butter, and we have to be reminded this the portion control because of calorie density.
Right, and the oatmeal, the rolled oats would only be, about 500 calories a pound, so not too terribly high. But then if you put in raisins, throw in some peanut butter, put some nut milk in there, or even a tablespoon of brown sugar or something like that, each of those things is going to increase the calorie density of that particular meal, but it doesn't make that meal unhealthy necessarily, especially if you left out the sugar and just had dried fruit and some nut milk in there. It's not like it's an unhealthy meal. It's just that you just increase the calorie density a little bit. Whereas if you maybe just ate maybe a few little raisins in there, left out the nut butter, and then the oat milk's not all that much for calories. Calorie density is high, but it's such a small amount, it's not going to make that big of a difference. And then instead of putting tons of dried fruit in there and tons of peanut butter in there, maybe you ate some fresh fruit before you ate the oatmeal, and then that would lower the calorie density of the meal overall. That's just an example with the breakfast example there.
If you take home one thing from this lecture, in my mind, it's bulk. Chef Novick made a big point of this. If you really eat foods that provide you with a lot of bulk, you can throw out that concept of portion control, which we've been trying to challenge patients with for most of their life. Don't eat too much. Eat smaller portions. Make your plate a little bit smaller so you don't put as much food on it. Well, you can throw that out the window if you really listen to what he said and looked at those pictures and focus on that concept. More bulk, and you have less problems. You don't have to count anything. You're eating foods. If you're eating a variety of foods that are bulky, you'll be healthier.
Other thing that was interesting is in those feeding studies, they had a rating system for how satisfying or filling foods were. So the number one most filling food for humans is boiled potatoes. So out of all the foods that they tested, the most filling, satisfying food ever tested was boiled potatoes. Because potatoes are only 400 calories a pound. So if you're putting butter, sour cream, cheese, bacon, frying it in oil to make French fries, then that would totally change the food. It's really high in calorie density, but you're just eating boiled potatoes, maybe put a little salsa on it, or vegetable soup on it, or a tofu sour cream, or red sauce or something like that. The stuff that I talked about in the meal planning class, that's not going to increase the calorie density all that much. But as far as just, you can never eat too many calories eating boiled potatoes, because you'd be full before you ever ate too many calories. I mean, think about did you see those 6 potatoes he had there? That was 800 calories. That would be pretty, there's no way you'd probably be able to eat all that. You'd be lucky to eat half of that, which would be 400 calories. So, whereas 400 calories, or half of that little cup of cashews was 800 calories. So that wouldn't make you feel full at all eating that.
So tonight's class, I've heard you, Scott, several times over the last number of years, and tonight's was especially good. I think the people who attended got a wealth of information, which was really important, and thank you very much for that. Nice work.
Thank you. And someone put in diabetic potatoes okay, and that is yes. But we'll talk about that more specifically when we have here in several weeks. We have the 2 classes on diabetes specifically coming up, so stay tuned. But yeah.
Thank you guys. I always like watching this one because it always reminds me in that video with Jeff Novick is great.
Marilyn and I have lost weight, but that isn't why we started this episode or this adventure. But we both lost quite a bit of weight, and and weight loss wasn't our plan even. So, but it's nice to refresh that calorie. See, I can't even say that, density.
Yeah.
Yes.
To kind of refresh our minds. So when we go to reach for something, we might think about what we're reaching for first.
Because the goal was to take the fat out of the arteries, and that's what it's been doing. It also dropped the fat off our bodies, but it took it out of our arteries, and that was the big deal.
I hope the new people are still listening, and I hope that they come back and listen to more of what you have to say.
And most of what I say is tomfoolery, but there's some in there.
But there is proof. We do have statistics.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next week again.
Thank you, Scott and Charlie.
Yeah.
Great job, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys in the movies.
You know,
Okay.
look
Bye,
forward to that
everybody.
every week.
Thank you.
Bye.